Hello, and welcome to another episode of Real World Analytics, or What Schools Don't Teach You. This is the third installment of my Kaggle series, where I've decided to participate in my first ever Kaggle competition and kind of vlog my progress. This is the competition I'm entering. I'll put a copy of it here. It's for the 2018 Kaggle Machine Learning and Data Science Survey Challenge, and I was prepared to finish this up today and tomorrow to have it in by the 10th when I thought it was due. Alas, when I look down here, the submission deadline is the 3rd, and winners will be announced on the 10th, so I have missed this deadline. I had some problems making this deadline, that is. So first of all, I had arranged my schedule around it being due the 10th, not the 3rd. And secondly, there were some questions I had about the data that I had to investigate a little bit more, in addition to my original concept of building a Shiny app to interact with the data. That obviously set me back. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to still go forward with my plan. I'm going to finish up the coding and the vlogging today and tomorrow, submit it. I'm not eligible to win, obviously, as the submission deadline is passed, but it was never really my goal to win. So I'm going to take the time to explore some other visualization options because I don't need to clean it up as much as I once thought I did. So if there are problems with the grammar or some analyses that I don't quite think I have right, I wasn't going to win anyway, and now I'm certainly not going to win. And this also gives me the opportunity to use this as a demonstration, because as a data scientist, there are times when you make a mistake, whether it's something as simple as I got the date wrong, or something more general if you have a bug in your code or something like that. And what I hope I've illustrated there is this kind of three-step process, if you will. First of all, say you've made a mistake, and at a high level, say what your mistake was. Secondly, give some reasons for the mistake. In my opinion, the difference between a reason and an excuse is if you start off with saying, I have made a mistake, this is my fault, everything you then provide is then a reason, not an excuse. And thirdly, talk about the impact. What is the impact of this mistake? If you need to fix your code, if all of your intermediate results are now null and void, give the opportunity to talk about that. In my experience with management and being a manager myself, if I go and say, look, I've made a mistake, this is how the mistake was made, this is what the impact is going to be from that mistake, it's a lot easier to then manage. As a manager, managing things like this, interesting that as a manager you're meant to manage, but managing things like this is part of the job, and so long as everything's transparent, it's a lot easier than, say, trying to hide it or trying to blow it off, or if I just abandon the Kaggle project, for instance. So let's look at where I am. I've been working on this in terms of global data science. My original idea was to try to use Shiny. Alas, that wasn't working. So now I've got my R Markdown document, and I've decided to focus more on the world. That my general idea is, let's talk about different countries. Let's talk about the strengths and weaknesses of different countries. And if I consider myself as someone looking to offshore or outsource some data science, which country should I focus on? If I look at India, say 30 years ago, it's not the powerhouse that it is now. These days, if you want pretty much any data science or software done, you can go to India. So kind of my problem statement is, what's the next India? What is the next country that could be maybe less of a powerhouse now, but in the future could be one? So that's the basic idea. My executive summary was going to be a list of recommendations. So I'll highlight list of countries and say, here are some countries that, based on my analysis, rank very highly. These are the reasons why they rank highly. And then you can go in and look at it. Something I've enjoyed doing in R Markdown is having these kind of tabs where I can have the problem statement and the motivation. The motivation for me was a bit more personal, talking about going to community summit for machine learning and data science in Seoul, South Korea, and meeting with community leaders. And in particular, the Malaysian government seems to have a strategy for big data because they recognize this opportunity that if you have an educated populace, connections to the internet, and to make it real for Kaggle, mentors and people to help with Kaggle challenges, that could be a good space to explore for the different countries. So I've done that with Three.js. Here's my little plot. We've got the number of Kaggle respondents to the survey per million people in population. If I rotate this, you can see this little outlier out here. That's Singapore, and it's only about 33 people per million of population. So it can be a little, I don't know, within the data science bubble, it seems like everyone's a data scientist, but actually 30 per million. Data scientists are actually quite rare. And if I look at this, I was talking about India and, what country could be the next India, say. And India is this big pink point out here, which is just not recognizing. There it is. So there's India, and you can see that there's these clusters of other countries around it. We've got Mexico, we've got Malaysia, Indonesia. And so if I'm looking at who could be kind of the next India or the next target for offshoring, the next target for development, the next target for outsourcing technical work, any of these countries could play in. Colombia, Brazil, there they are. So my first port of call was, well, okay, here's all these countries. But then I'm looking at the data again, and the title of this internet is Internet Users per 100 People. And the leader is the United States, which kind of seems reasonable to me, but it's at 1,500 internet users per 100 people, or about 15 internet uses per person. And so I'm looking at these data and thinking, is that right? Is that reasonable? I would think it would cap at 100. And here we are at 1,500. And so while I'm looking at this cluster and I'm getting kind of the information I want, that all these countries are similar to India within this space, and I'm going to be making recommendations that these would be a good place to go for development, but I'm looking at the data again and thinking, I'm not sure I trust the data. And if I don't trust the data, I'm not sure I can trust this recommendation. And if I don't trust this recommendation, then why am I recommending it? So I was looking at the data in a little bit more detail, and I looked at a map. And here I've just discretized those 3 variables. So I've created eight different categories, if you will, and put them up on a map. And so here, they're coded, they're ranked, and we can see that a lot of these countries that I've been to, so like Belgium, where's Belgium? There's Belgium. Belgium has an internet of 37 out of 100. Now, when I was in Belgium, I didn't see that. It looked like the Belgians had much better internet access than 40% of the population. The Netherlands, same thing, 40% of the population. And so I'm looking at these and thinking these data don't look right. I don't know if I can really make recommendations on them. I had written something saying, well, these are the data I have. Based on these data, this is what I can recommend. But part of my delay was looking at it and really asking myself if I should be doing this. I also had a bit more fun with it. As you can see, when I went back here, if I mouse over these countries, the flag pops up. That was fun to get to work. Of course, the code will be on GitHub, a link in the description below. I made some plots basically looking at the different countries in terms of their economy to see if they're related. They are. The wealthier countries tended to have a higher Kaggle density, and in particular, some of these had many more Kagglers than you may have first thought based on the size of their economy. So I was going to call some of those out, and then I realized, of course, that I have missed the deadline. I don't need to do that. So what I'm probably going to do instead, based on my concerns with some of these data, is I'm going to use the World Happiness Index. Because when I was looking at it, similar to with the economy, I'm going to reverse these plots so that Kaggle density and economy are the other way. And looking at the world happiness data, the higher the Kaggle density, the higher the happiness. The higher the Kaggle density, the more generous your people. The higher the Kaggle density, the more trust in the government. And I'm going to argue that, of course, if you have more people doing Kaggle, the world will be a better place, and there will be more people that understand you can't draw such conclusions from a correlation analysis. So that's where I'm going to be going. I hope to wrap this up today or tomorrow, probably tomorrow, given the way my schedule is looking. But the takeaway I want you to get from this is that when you do make a mistake, try to own up to it. Give the reasons, give the impact, and then, of course, follow through with it. Thank you all for watching. I'll be making a conclusion video tomorrow. Thank you.